Welcome students. You're supposed to write these notes on your own notebook paper or white paper and bring them to class. This video is to get ready for our district checkpoint test. Our district checkpoint test is going to be on January 22nd, which is Wednesday. Some of the topics being discussed on there are listed on the pages after this. A lot of the things that we're going to be tested on were things that were done back in the first semester, and that's why we're choosing to review those things. Function evaluation means that you plug in numbers for a function, and evaluate just means do the math. So you'll plug in numbers and do the math. It's a lot of what I call middle school method stuff that you guys learned back then. The function part of it, we have some high school ways that we do it. So you'll be given something like f of x equals 2x plus 2. So this is a function. And function evaluation means you'll be asked for things like, what's f of 2? Well, we replaced x with 2, so we're going to do the same thing here. Replace x with 2, and then we do the math. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 2 is 6. Therefore, f of 2 is 6. And you can do this for any number that you want, just plugging it in for x. You can even type this whole thing right here in your calculator on the regular screen and hit enter, and it'll give you the answer 6. Okay? Sometimes you might be asked to find multiple values. They might give you something like the domain is 0, 1, 2, and they'll ask you to come up with the range values that correspond to those. So that means you would plug in 0, and then since these are domain, those would be x's, so you would plug in 0, so it would be 2 times 0 plus 2, which would be 0 plus 2, or 2. So that would go there to correspond with 0. Then you would plug in 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 2 is 4. And we already know that f of 2 is 6, so 6 would go there. So you can do it for one number, or you can do it for a whole series of numbers. Direct variation, we learned in class, follows the form y equals kx. So it's y equals just something x. It's like mx plus b without the b. And the b is erased because the b is 0. Okay? A direct variation graph always goes through the origin. Okay? So all these would be direct variation, which is important because that means it always includes the point 0, 0. Okay, so if somebody asks you what is the equation for a direct variation where x equals 2 and y equals 4, then you could kind of make your own table here. We know 0, 0 always goes in there. We would take the 2 points that they gave us, x equals 2, y equals 4, and we could do stat edit with this, and that would give us our equation. Okay? So it's y equals kx, so it's some number x. It goes through the origin, always crosses 0, 0. If we have another point, we could do stat edit to get the equation. Systems in class, we learned how to write a system of equations. So if somebody gave me a system like Mr. Ashcraft went to the store and bought 2 math books and 3 science books and paid $12 for them. And Mrs. Nash went to the same store and bought 1 math book and 4 science books and paid $21. What is the cost of each math and science book? You could use this system of equation to find the value of the math and science books. Okay? System of equations, when we graph these lines, 3 things can happen. We can get one solution, and one solution happens when the graphs clearly cross, they hit each other. Okay? It may not always happen on your screen, it may be off your screen, but you can tell the lines are going to hit each other somewhere. We could have no solution, and that's parallel. That doesn't mean they just don't hit on your graph, it means that they are the same distance away from each other and will never hit. And the last situation is infinite solutions, and that means you graph the line, and then you come behind it, and the other line is directly on top of it. It means they always touch. To solve a system of equations, like 2x, we'll just do this one up here, we'll convert it to 2x plus 3y equals 12, and x plus 4y equals 21. The last way we learned in class had you do the 4-step process to get it ready for the calculator. Left parenthesis, so left parenthesis, opposite of x, so the opposite of 2x is minus 2x. The opposite of 1x is minus 1x. Step 3 was right parenthesis. And step 4 was divide by y. So our y number is 3, so divide by 3. Our y number is 4, so divide by 4. So we were able to put this in our calculator and this in our calculator and find out where the intersection is. I'm going to type that into my calculator now. I've not done this problem, I just made it up as we were talking here. So parentheses 12 minus 2x, close parentheses, divided by 3. And 21 minus 1x divided by 4, hit graph. Okay. I'm looking at my screen and these guys do hit each other. So I hit second trace 5, 1, 2, 3. And I find out that x equals negative 3 and y equals 6. Okay? So this is where they hit each other. Now this wouldn't really make sense for my word problem that I made up earlier, math book and science book, but I wasn't really thinking about the numbers when I made them up. I just kind of was making up things. So, but this is how you would solve it. You would use these steps, and this will work for any situation where you have a system of equations. Okay. Alright, slope in the real world. Slope is always change in y over change in x. So slope in the real world here would be miles per hour, and that's why you've heard that before. It's whatever's on this side over this side, miles per hour. Okay, if we're trying to do slope from a mapping, we still do change in y and change in x. So how do I get from 5 to 7? Plus 2. How do I get from 1 to 2? Plus 1. So I do the change in y over the change in x, which is 2 over 1. I could have done this one as a table. I could have made my own little table and had 1, 5, 2, 7, and then I could have done stat edit. That would have worked as well. If we have an equation, all we do for the equation is solve for y. Okay, we're going to put this thing into y equals mx plus b. So I box this, minus 2x from both sides. That becomes 4y equals, that cancels out. I'm going to write this in mx plus b form, which would be negative 2x plus 8. When it's beside it, I divide it, so I divide everything by 4. Y equals, I type this in my calculator, negative 2 over 4, math 1 enter, and that becomes negative 1/2 x. 8 divided by 4 is 2, so my slope is negative 1/2. If I have a graph, we always start on the left point and count to the right point. We get in the elevator, we go up 1 over 2. 1 over 2 is our slope. It's always rise over run. I rose 1, ran 2. If I rise down, go down, then we would use a negative number. Graphing lines, if I'm going to graph a line in my calculator, I make sure that it's solved for y. Then I go to y equals, type it in, and push graph, and that gives me a graph. Or I could push second graph, and that gives me a table. Okay. Changes in m and b. A lot of times they'll talk to us about wanting to double the slope or triple the slope or something like that. So if I wanted to double the slope of y equals negative 3x plus 2, double the slope would mean I'm going to double this number. So I would do times 2. So this would be negative 6x plus 2. If I double the slope, if I increase the slope, that's going to make a steeper line. If I decrease the slope, that'll make a flatter line. Changes in b, like if I have y equals negative 3x plus 2, and let's say I want to translate or shift that line up 5 units, that means I'm going to focus on this line, the b, because the b is what moves it up and down. So if I want to translate it up 5 units, that would be adding 5. So this would be negative 3x plus 2 plus 5 is 7. So be careful there. A lot of people want to pick answers that have 5 in them, but you're adding the 5 to the 7 that's already there. So this made it steeper. This translate or shifts up. Okay. A lot of times we get confused on when to do stat edit versus when to do y equals. Stat edit does table to equation. Okay, so to do stat edit, you have to start with a table and you'll finish with an mx plus b equation. Okay? Y equals lets you do equation and end up with a graph or table. Okay? So these two guys are really the opposites of each other. You got to look at what are you given in the problem. If you're given a table, then you do stat edit. If you're given equations, then you do y equals. Okay? This will help you answer a lot of questions on your checkpoint and your EOC at the end of the year. Okay. Intercepts, we have our y-intercept, and another name for the y-intercept is b, and we have our x-intercept, and another name for the x-intercept is the 0. Okay? So if we have a graph and it looks like this, the x-intercept is down there, and that is always something 0. So this is 1, 2, 3, 0. The b, or initial fee, or startup fee, is right there, and it is always 0, a number 1, 2, 3. Okay? So the numbers don't have to be 3, but the y-intercept will always have an x of 0, and the x-intercept will always have a y of 0. We talk about real-world slopes and intercepts. Intercepts are always our starting or initial fee, and slope is always our continuing fees. So if I have a problem where like Mr. Ashcraft has $32 in the bank and he is depositing $20 per week, then it would look like this. I have $30 in the bank and I'm depositing 20 per week. So the continuing thing is I'm doing 20 per week. I started with 30. Okay? So if somebody says, well, somebody hacked into Mr. Ashcraft's computer account and now he only has $4 to start with, then my equation would switch to this. Okay? $4 to start with. Okay? Let's say that he wants to buy a new polo shirt and he only has $4, so he needs to start saving more money. So let's say he's going to save twice as much per month. So instead of saving $20 per month, he's going to save $40 per month. So that's how we change our equations depending on real-world situations.